Hello guys, so welcome back to my channel. Hope you guys are feeling good. My name is Bukomi Bikekram.
Is there a way for someone to actually read those texts, repudiate much of it, and yet still call themselves Muslim in the same way that I call myself a Jewish atheist, right? So I am Jewish because Judaism incorporates many, many facets: a shared history, shared genes, shared, ethnicity. But I don't necessarily believe in the religious narrative. So I can call myself a non-believer, but who yet belongs to a very distinct group of people. So could something similar happen with Muslims if they awaken to some of the contents, or that's the challenge? It's almost impossible to do so.
Well, I mean, I'm of the opinion, like, even though you're sitting in front of me, saying you're a Jewish atheist, I don't know to the extent that that's something that most people will be able to accept.
Right.
And for most people, an identity means something, like something more, especially with something like Islam, where they say it's literally the perfect text, and there's not really, it's not as, I guess, there's not a history of a certain ethnicity or whatever, or certain people being associated with a religion. It's considered a universal religion, and it crosses all these cultures, crosses all these boundaries. I just don't think that that's the best way to go about it. I actually think we need to move straight to atheism.
Wow.
I mean, I know that that's intense. I know that that's intense, but I actually think that's easier. I think it's easier to do for most Muslims to just give up the identity altogether. And then I may be wrong when I say that, but I think that that's totally possible. And I think to some extent there are many countries or many cultures that have been sort of taken over by Islam, and their own cultural histories have been erased, right? And South Asia is a great example of this, because you can compare India and Pakistan side by side, and you can see that they
Same people, different
they're the
religion.
same people.
Yeah.
They're the same people, different religion, and they had the same culture, they shared the same values, and how much that has changed, right? And how much you can see just religion's effect on that very clearly. And I think that's a very unfortunate thing. So I talk to people who are Pakistanis, and I say, look at the beauty of the culture that has been erased, and the harms which would have gone away over time but never did, because they were also reinforced to some extent by religion.
Right.
The music, the dancing, the clothes, I mean, it all became a little bit more Islamic, and everything changed. And I want people to feel sorrowful that happened.
Right.
That those histories are being erased. I want people to feel that way, and I think maybe come back to that identity, and maybe that's a step forward in a way that maybe a Muslim atheist identity isn't. So that's my opinion now. I mean, it may change in the future, but that's how I'm feeling currently.
So how has your approach resonated with the people with whom you interact? I mean, I'm not asking you to give me sort of a success rate, but what's the general feel? I mean, what are some of the successes? What are some of the obstacles, and so on?
Well, I don't go out trying to convert people out
Right.
of religion. That's not. I don't. I practice what I practice, and I believe what I believe, and I'm very outspoken about it. And I think that in itself changes minds. And sometimes people think that that's a form of proselytization if you're just vocal about your disbelief at all, right? So if people say something, I'll say something.
Right.
And I can't tell you about broader overall friends, because nowadays I spend most of my time with atheists. But my family, it took a long time, and different things worked for different people. So my father, who is now an atheist,
Congratulations.
it's wonderful. Now that he's an atheist, it took almost a decade to make that happen, but for him it was sort of a philosophical thing, and of morality. And then we came then specifically to the religion, because a lot of people get really offended if you start immediately talking about the harms of Islam in particular, because they feel singled out. So for those who feel sort of besieged, I'll start with a general critique of Islam, or of religion, excuse me, of a general critique of religion, and let's apply this to everything,
Right.
and sometimes that works, and I think that's what worked. That's what worked with some of my family members. So and we have a screening process. We don't just let anyone in that wants to be in. We speak to the people ahead of time. We do it the best we can. I mean, there's no way to ensure safety, but we can try.
Right.
And we do. And we have these protocols that we develop, and we try and enforce them the best we can. And that scares some people off, because we want you to divulge some personal information about yourself to us, so that we can understand if you are, really and what are your motives for joining something like this. And some people aren't even comfortable doing that because they're so afraid.
Right. Now, are they usually afraid for sort of the most basal, survival reasons? I'm going to be killed as an apostate, or are they predominantly afraid to be ostracized from their community, their families, and so on? Of course, both can hold true. But what's your general feeling? How imminent is each danger in their minds?
Well, it depends. It depends on the person. Sorry about the vague answer, but I think it depends on the person. There are quite a few, unfortunately, who are afraid.
Physically, they're going to be harmed.
Of physical danger.
Wow.
I wouldn't say that's a majority, but it's sizable minority, and that's and those people tend to sort of run away quicker,
right.
In the sense that we'll tell them, we require that you do XYZ before you can join our organization. Sometimes they get afraid for that because they say, I don't even want that much revealed. But
and these are people who are living in North America, right? They're not contacting you from Pakistan.
Right, and they tend to be people from more extremist ethnic groups, I guess. The Somali community, for example,
Yes.
is one that tends to be a lot more extreme to apostates and to people who sort of deviate. It's not so bad with Pakistanis, not so bad with Indians, not so bad with Bangladeshis as it is with Somalis, I've found. So there is variation in terms of where maybe you're from. And
any insight as to
how
why
that would be?
Why would that be? Do you have any sense? Is it how close you are sort of to the Arabic roots? I mean, literally geographically, if not ideologically, or what can explain this phenomenon, if you know?
I mean, I can only guess.
Right.
And definitely something that I've noticed is that there's a romanticization of, Arab culture,
Right.
and the religion in the communities that tend to be the most extreme. And with Pakistanis, I mean, the religion is a big part of it, but there is an independent culture that existed before the religion came in, that exists now. And so you can sort of relate to both, and you can sort of hold those both identities a little bit easier than with some other countries.
Right.
I think.
Right. In Lebanon, at the time that I was growing up there in the 70s and 60s, you almost never saw any woman wearing any Islamic garb. As a matter of fact, it was very, very badly seen by everybody, Muslims, non-Muslims alike, to actually dress in this manner. And then, of course, as you know, if you look at photos from Afghanistan in two different time periods,
Right.
or in Iran, and
Pakistan's the same.
Pakistan is the
Right.
same, and so it's quite hypocritical to sort of argue that there is no way to maintain your Muslim identity without donning these attires, because we've got all sorts of historical contexts where women weren't wearing it. Even in the context of Montreal, I mean, now of course this is mainly due to immigration, but if you compare the number of women who today walk around Montreal streets wearing all sorts of various Islamic garbs to 10 or 12 years ago, I mean, you absolutely never saw it then. And I would probably venture something like 1 out of every 10 women that you see on the streets today is wearing an Islamic garb. And so I wonder if there is a way to go back to the more secular, modern style. I mean, what do you think would have to happen? Is it that you have to convince these women that they can still maintain their identities without having to consistently create this wall of separation with the other? What's the solution to this?
I mean, I think that's tied in with the rise of more fundamentalist, literalist Islam overall. And I wonder what that has to do with, people actually reading it.
Right.
the rise of literacy of the average population in these countries who are reading it and who can see for themselves that the most extremist people are more on the ball
Right.
than maybe the more liberal ones. And also on that same vein, there are people who are shedding their cultural backgrounds in favor of a more Islamic, identity.
Right.
And you see that a lot in the West, which scares me.
Right.
You see that a lot where there's a concentrated effort to 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 find out what was cultural, like say for in the Pakistani communities there may be, and in the mosques, there's an effort to look at what is an Islamic tradition or what's a Pakistani tradition. And
Right.
if it's a Pakistani tradition, let's toss it and let's embrace whatever is the Islamic tradition. I mean, unless they don't contradict each other at all and they don't
Right.
affect each other at all in
Right.
any way. So there is this growth of like a universal global Muslim identity that I think is tied into this women wearing hijab all the time, because I mean the way that they defined what being Muslim was had a lot to do with their local customs.
Right.
So the way women in Pakistan defined it. I mean, then there was the growth of there was a lot of Sufis in India and in Pakistan at a time, and that was. But now you can see that that's not. You can read the Quran for yourself, and you can see that that's not the truth. So I think things are changing, and
Right.
that's very unfortunate. I don't know if there's a way to go back, because we do have something that we're starting with. We do have this text, and unless you can say this text is not the complete truth or it's not a literal truth, you can't go anywhere.
Guys, I really love this conversation. And the lady that spoke is an ex Muslim. So she's a Pakistan and she's a writer. So now I think she writes based for ex Muslim. She writes a lot about religion, concerning religion. So she was invited by Gad Saad to come and explain few things about Islam, and she spoke about their culture. She spoke about how she was in the religion before, how she left. Now she's more of an atheist. Her parents are atheists, and Gadsad actually, you know, made one statement that I was really really confused when he said he's a um Jewish, what do you call it? Jewish atheist. I've never heard of that before, guys. Is that you? How that the guy said, the lady said you have to know your faith. You can't just pick two things at the same time. Is that you stick to this religion or you don't be in that religion, or you can't just choose two things at the same time. It's like you're trying to confuse people, because you can't say you're a Jewish today, tomorrow you say you don't believe in God, and everybody is entitled to their own belief, and that's what he wants, and that's how he has been, you know, handling things when it comes to religion. And I love how she spoke a lot about Islam, their culture, you know, a lot of things she discussed that really got my attention, and I really enjoyed their brief discussion. And she talking about, you don't have to force yourself to be. She's more like, as if based on my understanding, she's trying to let us understand that, stick to what you believe in. And she even spoke about the history. She said one of the history she discovered back then in this time is that there was nothing like Aram in music. You can play music, you can listen to music until later on they change everything. So that actually confused her, that why would they actually do that if back in those days music were allowed, listening to music were allowed, singing song were allowed, then why is it Aram? Why is it forbidden now? She made a statement regarding that. So she just spoke about the Pakistans, Islam, why she's an atheist and everything. And I just love their discussion, guys. This was a very beautiful one, very 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 beautiful and educative. It's not a recent video per se. This video is kind of old video, but let me know your point of view, guys. I'll see you guys next one. Bye.